Four Things is from Yorgos Lanthimos, director of The Lobster, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, and The Favorite. It was written by Tony McNamara, creator of The Great and writer for The Favorite. Based on a novel by Alistair Gray, it's about a dead girl who is brought back to life by a mad scientist with the brain of her unborn infant. And for the next 2.5 hours, this baby takes constant dick. Okay, so I didn't make a YouTube short about this, even though that's what I now have to do as soon as I get out of the theater to please the algorithm. But for this one, I needed some time to collect my thoughts. This was a lot. I've seriously considered making this a single review because I think my views on this one might overwhelm whatever I have to say about What If. Even while I'm writing the script for this video, I'm still unsure. If you're hearing this, that means it's still a double feature review. I couldn't resist the appeal of making this about something popular and accessible, but then making people sit through this crap first. But anyway, it's the story of that monster growing up to supposedly become a strong, independent woman. And like I said, having a lot of sex. This movie revels in that shock value throughout. No, it's not Pink Flamingos or something like that. I haven't seen that movie and don't plan to, and even I realize that. But that only makes it more shocking, how casual and understated its pedophilic undertones are. So, what is this movie? Is it the feminist epic that the critics say it is? Is it just an outlet for Yorgos Lanthimos' more ethically questionable fetishes? Is it the, God forbid me for making this comparison, the more extreme yet socially acceptable version of what Cuties tried to do? A little bit of all three? I needed some time to decide. But whatever it is, I'm now pretty sure that I liked it despite having mixed feelings about it. First off, the production design is great. It takes place in some weird steampunk world that feels like a brighter version of what Tim Burton would make with a little bit of Wes Anderson for good measure, and it looks beautiful. Also, Emma Stone gives a great performance as the infant brain monster, for better or worse. But yes, when it's not uncomfortable, her innocence becomes charming and funny. This is the kind of movie concept where if you laugh, you become a much worse person. I laughed several times and so did everyone else in the theater. But she's more than just some dumb comic relief character thrust into the center of the movie. She's a deep and likable character. And her story is consistently interesting, even when it's hard to watch. The feminist narrative is also very deep and intriguing, although it definitely works best when it's not focusing on the sexual element, like scenes where she's instead learning about how to live in polite society, or the mostly cathartic finale. But sadly, these elements do get marred a little by the movie's obsession with shock value. Although I do get it, which is where the comparisons to that movie which should not be named come in. It takes society's obsession with women as sex objects but makes it shocking, disturbing, and borderline pedophilic. While that one did it through questionable methods, this one thankfully did it only with an unescapable subtext that will get under your skin. Good luck jacking off to Emma Stone after this. Every sex scene consists of her getting taken advantage of by men. But that becomes a kind of blessing and a curse here, particularly in the second half at points where many other feminist movies would make the sex scenes more about her sexual liberation. It's unclear how many years have passed by that point, but obviously she can't be sexually liberated until her brain is 18. Actually, 15 or 16, let's be generous here. And the movie doesn't pretend otherwise. The only issue is that it's hard to view her as a strong woman when she's still being exploited by men. Also, it kind of leads to a bit of confusion on what the movie's feelings on sex are. It can't be sex positive because the sex is uncomfortable and she's being taken advantage of. It can't be sex negative because they went out of their way to film these scenes to be graphic. Considering how big a role sex plays here, it seems important that they'd actually say something about how to feel about it. But it all leads up to a very satisfying climax. It is borderline perfection in its catharsis. Until you look further into it and realize that only one person gets his comeuppance and everyone else who took advantage and exploited her, some of whom are still in her life, get off scot-free. Which kind of gives off a depressing, cynical view of the concept of feminism. Is this really the best woman can get? Not all of this movie's narrative holds up to scrutiny, but it's still a technically great film. It's a weird one for me, something that I both love and hate at the same time. I don't make a best and worst movies of the year list because I don't see all of the great movies in time and I never see all the bad movies at all. I made a brief list of the best and worst so far before the most anticipated list I do instead. But if I was going to do a traditional best and worst list, I guess a good compromise would be this as an honorable mention on both lists, because it's both one of the best and worst movies I saw this year. It's still among the best Lanthimos movies I've seen. I know that's such a backhanded compliment, but I don't even hate him. I've seen The Lobster and The Favorite and thought they were both okay, even though I don't remember what happened in the latter. My opinion on him really rose after seeing The Killing of a Sacred Deer just a few weeks ago. I'd say that's his best so far, though this one is second place despite my complaints. When it's good, it's brilliant. It turns out he works best for me when he's leaning into this shock value. Who would have guessed that the actual psychological horror film wouldn't be as uncomfortable as the steampunk Frankenstein movie? Keep in mind, Killing of a Sacred Deer is very uncomfortable. Surprisingly, the indie auteur film doesn't tackle feminism as well as the corporate billion-dollar movie. It's a little less surprising when you remember that one was written and directed by an actual woman. But this is still a delightfully bizarre yet undeniably uncomfortable movie with great performances. I don't know whether this review makes me sound too prudish or too easily forgiving. It's probably the first one.
Have you ever wondered what might have been? Would things be different if you caught the train instead of missing it? How much would your life change if you were 10 minutes early?
Hello?
Instead of 10 minutes late?
Helen?
2 lives, 2 chances, and a destiny that lies behind 2 sliding doors.
What If just finished its second season on Disney+. They released it quickly, 1 episode a day every day, and it finished last Saturday, so I can talk about it now. This will be a lot less analytical than that last one. I'm only putting this second so that people would be less likely to turn off the video after I cover the popular Marvel one. So, it's an animated series in the Marvel Universe. Or, it's complicated. It's about parallel universes, where they show a different version of events that happen in the Marvel Universe. Like if Captain America's girlfriend became Captain America instead. An anthology narrated by Jeffrey Wright's Watcher character, who's some sort of interdimensional being who just watches these kinds of things happen, until all the episodes come together near the end of each season and he usually becomes more of an actual presence. But it's best when it's an anthology. The wilder, more original concepts are the high points. It's able to do more bizarre things without concern for what effects it could have on the other shows and movies. So it opens with What If Nebula joined the Nova Corps, which takes place in a world that feels a little Blade Runner-esque, which is a nice breath of fresh air. Although, it follows that up with What If Peter Quill attacked Earth's mightiest heroes, which is, in contrast, a pretty dull alien invasion episode with somewhat corny dialogue. Anthology shows are usually hit and miss. I guess a lot of these have corny dialogue, but the stories and concepts are often worth it. And of course, the action. See, it benefits from its animated format because it can show stuff that might be more difficult to show in live action, or at least without it looking fake. And the animation is good here. Some more highlights. What if the Avengers assembled in 1602? Yet another one that takes a big swing with concept and makes it different. What if Iron Man crashed into the Grandmaster? Has some very strong Taika Waititi vibes. A lot of it is from the fact that it takes place in the arena from Thor Ragnarok and has some of his characters. So to match that, it tries to replicate his style of humor, and it does more closely resemble Ragnarok than Thor Love and Thunder. It's not as good as Ragnarok, but it does work. What if Happy Hogan Saved Christmas, which is a non-subtle riff on Die Hard that I think might have actually gone up on Christmas Eve. It's pretty much the same concept where terrorists take over a Christmas party at Stark Tower and only one less superpowered guy can save them.
What is this, Con Air? No, wait, Under Siege? No. Oh, that's not it.
Hey, John McClane, focus!
The appeal of this for me is that despite the superpowers and stuff, it still feels more like Die Hard than a superhero movie. There's no blur of CGI people flying around here. The action feels restrained and almost real, and different, and more interesting because of that. And then there's What If Kahori Reshaped the World. It's about the universe where the big glowing thing was destroyed or something, and that created... Okay, it's some kind of complex lore thing, but that doesn't matter because this is the kind of thing that could exist without the context of the Marvel Universe. It's the story of a Native American woman told almost entirely in her language with only some lines in Spanish from the conquistadors. See? Marvel makes stuff in other languages. They do make high art. But anyway, she falls into some sort of spirit world created by lore stuff and uses that world to become all-powerful and save her people from the conquistadors. And her journey is a very interesting one that isn't afraid to rewrite history in this universe. Maybe the plot might move a little fast and the ending, which is just a cliffhanger to later episodes, kinda kills it, but it's still my favorite at least of this season. And I wouldn't mind seeing more of her. Which might not be impossible because when this season converges into an actual ending, it brings back a few characters from last season, especially Captain Carter from the very first one. This is a surprisingly Carter-centric season. Unfortunately, when it does come together, it isn't really as exciting as when it happened last season. Maybe a lot of that is unavoidable because it's not as big of a deal now that it's been done before and the surprise is gone. But this is still a good season. It may or may not require a lot of knowledge about the universe, but it's sort of rewarding. I'm going to give this a 3.5 stars too, but not because I think it's as good as Poor Things. Despite my complaints, Poor Things is a pretty high 3.5, while this is a low 3.5. And I think both of those ratings sound fair.